I've purchased a cheap tilt hood kit, so I'm going to work on that installation. But the first thing I got to do is take these hood hinges off. So there are 2 bolts on the outside of the firewall here, those 2 there, and then inside behind the glove box got one there, and then one up there behind that wire and loom. So should be pretty simple to just pull them 4 bolts and take that hinge off on both sides, and then I'll open the box for the kit and see what we got in there. Okay, got the 4 bolts off, so, or nuts rather, nuts off the bolts. So in theory this ought to just pop right off here. It's got these washers on the back side, these nice big heavy washers, so that's probably what's hooking that one on there. So there you go, pop that right off of there. So we'll do the other side real fast, hopefully it goes smooth. Other hood hinges off. Again, not much to them. Here's the kit that I ordered, just a cheap one. I think I got this off Amazon, but they're all of them that look like this seem to be about all the same, so I just found the cheapest shipped to my door. Most of them I guess take some tweaking and adjustment, which I would assume because all these trucks are a little bit different. Excuse me. Here are the instructions I'll go off of, so not very in-depth, but you know, it's hopefully mostly self-explanatory, but I guess we will soon find out. Gonna have to make a little adjustment here. So take that fender bolt out there, and that's where this one goes. There's some washers and stuff, but I'm just mocking this up. So that goes in that hole there, using an existing fender bolt hole. This one using the existing fender hole, but this one's off a little bit. So I'm just gonna take and clearance this side out on the grinder. That should hopefully get me over plenty close to get that to line up. So I got that radius off of there, so that ought to at least get me started. Be curious how well these will line up, if I'll have to cut or bend or whatever these around to get them to line up correctly, but we'll worry about that when we get there. So I've made a similar tweak on the other side here, notched that out a little bit to fit. What I'm running into here is I've got a lip on that fender. See this lip right here? So that bracket obviously can't fit down on there. So I'm thinking to start out, of course now I'm wondering if maybe that's, I wouldn't think that was supposed to go underneath. I'll just stack some washers on that for now. I don't really want to trim this until I need to lower this front piece, if that's what I end up doing. But the other side's thicker since it's fiberglass and it's flat all the way across. So I think stacking washers will actually align it more with the other side anyway, to be a similar thickness. So we're going to try that for now. If not, I'll come back and tweak it later. Okay, so I've got both sides just loosely bolted on. What I did to start out with is I just leveled this basically, eyeball level. I don't know where it's supposed to be, but we'll start there and adjust it up and down as necessary. See how that goes. So I've got these little metal brackets that go over this. I went and painted them before I stuck them on there, so as soon as they're dry I'll get those put on there. Went ahead and got the other parts that were bare metal, painted the primer red that I'm using for now. And I've got these, so that bolt goes, that's a factory bolt, and then once the rods installed across here, these back holes will need to be drilled on both sides. But what I'm seeing right now is both these brackets are going to have to be bent. See how that one's kind of going downward, as is that one. So they should be level going across there so that tube can go straight across. So I'm gonna have to stick those in the vise and straighten them back up a bit, and then do some test fitting. I'll just show you real fast. This seems to be bending pretty easy, so what I've done is just inserted that cross shaft and use that as my pry bar, so it tweaks pretty easy using it that way. Okay, got those straightened out, so now that fits on there. But something I noticed yesterday that I gotta, while I was painting it, that I need to fix too, is that guy right there, cracked weld. So always inspect your welds on these, especially, well, anything, but especially the Chinese stuff, because it's made for fast production, so quality's obviously not their main priority. It's getting the part welded off the assembly line. That one's not very good. I might touch that one up too, but I'll just grind that out a touch and hit it with my MIG. But overall, welds don't look terrible. What's the worst that could happen, right? Could come off. So inspect all that stuff. Do yourself a favor. I'll get that one welded up and we'll move on here. So I got the couple spots that I didn't like re-welded. Got these tabs kind of bent to where I like them, and I've got a real nice smooth motion on that. There's a little bit of binding because I noticed that the whole tube itself has got a little bit of a bend in it. You can kind of see that gap change. It's minor. I don't imagine that's going to affect it any. This is touching just barely there, but not enough to hurt anything, so we'll just leave that like that. So now, I've gotten these tightened down, so it's going to hold this bracket on both ends, and then I'll drill these holes here and get that bracket mounted on there, so that should be good. Oh, something else too, is I made sure there wasn't any paint inside this socket on that, nor in that, and then I put some grease in it there, you can see, so grease those up good. Guy would maybe want to drill and tap a grease zerk on the end of this. I don't know. It's going to be out of the elements, so I imagine that grease that's in there will last a long time, so I think that'll be okay. Now I'm to the point of mounting this assembly to underneath the hood, which shouldn't be that difficult, but I'm missing some metal. So there's supposed to be a strut rod on each side. This side has it. This one even looked a little cracked in here, so I'm going to get that one off so I can use that as a reference for center line. Get this cut out and re-welded with a new piece, and then this rod comes out like I said, and then these pieces come off. They get replaced with brackets that come with the kit. These pieces here bolt to that front location, so the guy needs to take, and these are spot welded on there, so I'll clean this off with a wire wheel and see where those spot welds are, and just drill on top of them with the drill bit until they get weak, and then I can knock that out. And then those look a little bit bigger too, so the guy might end up having to notch this, I'm not sure, so we'll worry about that when I get there. But main thing the first thing I got to do is get these patched up and go from there. So I've got the old piece cut out. After I ground this off, I'm not really seeing cracks in that like I thought there was, so I think this side's okay. So we can show you what I've done here. Just cut out a square there, and this is again another old hard drive magnet, but any kind of magnet will work, but these are super strong, so I like to use those when I can. So what I'm going to do is try to do, that's a blind nut, it's captive behind there, whatever, so you don't have to get on it with a wrench. So what I'm going to do is get this mocked in here, figure out where that hole is, drill it, and weld a nut on the back side like that one is before I put it in there. This could be a real pain in the butt to try to get a nut on that without dropping it down in the hood, so I think that'd be the best way to go about that. So that's what I'm going to try here if I don't screw it up. Got the nut tacked on there, so we'll wait for that to cool down and see about getting it tacked onto the hood. So here I've got the new piece just spotted in place, so now I'll just slowly work around spot welding it. Don't want to put too much heat in one spot, so you just kind of bounce around, let it cool in between, and then we'll grind it down flush and see how it fits with the new brackets. And there we go. A little paint on there, should be as good as new. I think that come out pretty good. Working on drilling the spot welds out of these brackets, and actually pretty hard to find where the spot welds are. I took a wire brush or wire wheel, my angle grinder, cleaned it up, and almost had to kind of look and shimmer, you know, at the angle of the light like that, just right to find where those spots were. This one's even harder to find, but I think I've located the three.
I think there's just 3. So I've just started with an 1/8 bit just to get a center hole going, not all the way through, and now I'll hit it with a bigger bit that'll take most of that material out and see if that'll break those welds loose. So there's what we ended up with. Got the holes drilled. It went a little bit farther than I wanted, but it ain't gonna hurt nothing. And that one was kind of on the edge. I had to take my die grinder, my little air cutoff tool, and just kind of skim across that to break that one loose. So we'll work on the other side and see how it goes. This bracket gave me a little bit more of a fight. I wasn't quite finding, I think, the center of the spot weld, so I took my little die grinder here and just used that to eat up the bracket, and then it looked like it was spot welded a couple times down the edge, so I'll take and get that all cleaned off now, but did get it off. So I'm getting these pieces notched out here to fit, so I had to notch this piece over, I don't know, 3/4 of an inch or so, and now I'm also having to notch down and over like this as well, so these can kind of drop in there like that. I might need to do a little bit more, but I think that's just about right. So now I'll center it up really good and get those holes drilled. And I would recommend when doing that to drop a board or something back there, so when your drill bit goes through you don't accidentally put a dent in the outside part of the hood, which you do not want. So these went in really tight. There's bushings on this shaft, and this piece almost had to spread out a little bit to fit those. So I don't, maybe the paint added enough to make it a struggle, I'm not sure, but I'll get you outside zoom here so you can kind of see how these pieces go together. You can see those little triangle pieces. The open end goes towards the front of the truck, and then you've got these 2 bolts here that allow you for some adjustment on the hood, and then just notching the piece out for that. So not too bad so far. So I don't like that there's a big gap between this brace here and this bracket. See how much slop is in there? And when I tighten it down, it just bends those tabs in. So what I'm going to try for now is add some washers in there. You can kind of see, turn the light on here, you can see I've added a couple washers in there so that doesn't pinch shut when I tighten it. I don't know, I didn't see any washers in the kit. It kind of shows them in the directions, like there's something supposed to be there, but I don't see anything in the kit. You can see right here, those little things there, they're not the nuts or the bolts, and they're dropping right in that slot. So I'm kind of thinking that there's supposed to be some there. It would make sense to me, so I just grabbed some out of my bolt bin. So that's what I'm gonna try for now. And it would give me a little bit of an alignment adjustment, I guess, too, if I had to move the washers around later, but I doubt that's enough adjustment to make any difference. There's enough slop, I think, in this whole thing that that's probably negligible. Got the brackets all bolted onto the hood here. I did make one mistake, and I'll warn you, I guess, although you're probably better at this than I am. I ended up trimming a little too much on this end. This bracket is angled this way a little bit, kind of to exaggerate the point. It's kind of like this in relation to the hood, and I was trimming because this bracket was still hitting this piece that I needed to trim, so I kept trimming straight across, and it cleared it over here, but then it created it was getting pretty close to, well, I was on the edge of that hole there, so I just wallowed that hole down a little bit that way, basically made a slider adjustment out of it. It's a custom now. Anyway, so that way to get this bolt back into the meat of the sheet metal so it wasn't on the edge. So otherwise, the other side came out fine. I was short 2 bolts for this part, so I again scavenged my bolt bin and added a bolt for each side. There's 6 other bolts, but they're like a 1/4 inch, and that can't be what those are for. So these are 5/16 on those brackets. So got it all centered up, took my time, used clamps to hold them in place while I marked and drilled the holes. That way nothing would move. I also recommend measuring the distance between here and that gap there. This side needed to come up just a hair. Well, more than a hair, a 1/4 inch or maybe a 1/8, 3/16. Anyway, needed to come up, so I measured that distance as well as the side to side. I found it easiest to just mark the center of the hood and then tape off to each bracket from there rather than going from the outside. The outside edge it's concave right there, so it's not a real good spot to measure from. That's my feeling anyway. So so there's that. Now I need to put the rollers on, and they go, I believe, in these lower holes, the lower hinge holes. And then I do have a bolt that got cut off here. I need to get that taken out of there. It was cut off when I couldn't get the bolt out when I took the hood off originally, so I'll take the grinder and finish that off so it doesn't rattle going down the road. But yeah, it's looking good so far, making some more progress. So once those rollers are on, I guess the next step is getting it on here, which I don't know if I can do that by myself. I might have to go grab some help. And it's going to be interesting to see how to attach these. Actually, I don't know how I'm going to do that, because to bolt that on there, I've got to get in behind. There might be enough room to reach up the hood and underneath it. Like, I think I'll set the hood on here and just have it hovering over the front to give me enough room to get that bracket. We'll try it. It might be easier to put that cross brace on the truck and then drop the slots and use these, but this is such a tight fit, I don't know if I can get the hood over it. But that might be what I end up doing, attach that to the truck and then detach it here and slide it up in there once it's on the truck. I might have to do it that way if this other way doesn't work. So we will see in a little bit. Got the rollers on. The only thing to note is that one side has a little bit of a flange on it, so I put that on that side because I would imagine you wouldn't want this whole disc rubbing on that. It gives a little bit of space there, so just a little FYI. Here's what I come up with to put this on by myself. I think this will work so long as I don't run out of height, but I think I'm pretty much there as is. So I just took a strap in between those two brackets and then chained it up as, you know, if this wasn't high enough, I could tighten that up a little bit more and get a little more height out of it too. But I think this will do the trick. We will find out in a second here. I haven't quite got it yet, but I wanted to point out, if you do try it this way, I'm having to actually shove the hoist into the truck to kind of get an angle on it. And when I do that, the hoist is folding back over the hood there, bending back over the hood, and then it's also up against the front of the grill. So if you've got nice shiny parts, I don't know if this is the best way to do this, but in my case, I'm not too worried about it, obviously, but FYI. Alrighty, got the hoist attached. There was enough binding in the hinge. I think it's probably that one bushing to actually keep this standing up while it was there, but I wouldn't count on it. I don't know, some guys, well, maybe I don't have a problem. I was thinking some guys were having problems with their hood staying open without the prop. I don't know if maybe that's an adjustment thing, or maybe my Ford-O-Matic emblem is just heavy enough on the front to make a difference between most pickups, but probably doubt that. Anyway, so now I'll see about getting this adjusted. I haven't put my hood latch on yet. I figured it might be easier to adjust this part before I started fighting with the hood latching. So we'll see how that goes. We'll see if that was a good idea or not, but I think this is working pretty good so far, but I won't know until I, you know, close it in and see how far off it is, or it chips all the paint off or whatever, but we'll see here. So this is as far as I can close the hood initially. I would say from the looks of it, it needs to come forward. I don't know, if it closes, I guess it would be maybe right on. So I'm not sure why it's not going down all the way. It's high in the back. It actually looks like it's just not closing completely. My gaps are looking good here.
looking good over there, oddly enough. So I'll need to just kind of pull it up and down here and see if I can see what it's not, unless it is all the way down and I just need to lower my brackets down. I'll see if I can get a flashlight and look in there. I don't know if we can do that with the camera or not. I'm gonna say not. Okay, well that didn't work. So I'll get my flashlight and see if I can see in there. Maybe these back brackets need to be adjusted, so find out. Took some adjusting, but I finally got the hood to close all the way. It's not perfectly in alignment, but we're getting pretty close. So over here, I've still got a decent gap across the back, but there ain't much left here in the front, so I might adjust that a tad, but I'm not too concerned about that. Height wise, we're maybe just still a touch high in the back, but when I put the latch in, the front needs to come up a hair, and that'll probably kind of fix that. Like I say, it doesn't have to be perfect. And this gap here, I noticed it's pretty good all the way through here, but there's kind of a wow, I don't know if you can see it, but in the fender itself there's a bit of a bulge right there. So this is fiberglass, so I think I'll just take my paddle wheel and just, or my those flapper disc grinder pads, and just clean this back a little bit. It probably got a little Bondo or something on there maybe at one time and kind of made that a little more stick out a little bit farther than it needed, but it just kind of popping a little bit when I lift it up. This seam over here is decent, but it's still, the hood itself isn't closing down. It's quite as low as it needs to, and I think it's because that bracket's on those spacers. So I'll probably go ahead and I lowered the back down as far as I can when it hits the body. I'll show you in a second. Of course, I'll show you where I'm running into interference there, but between that and maybe these spacers here might be this issue, but I couldn't get the hood to close all the way, so I'll show you what I had to do to get that to happen here in a second. So when the hood wouldn't close all the way in the front, it was binding up here on this I don't know, the core support or whatever you want to call this piece the hinge goes in, or the latch goes in, but you can see here it was rubbing, and I originally had this adjustment here all the way to the back, so I ended up having to pretty much put it all the way to the front on both sides to get the hood to come down. Not a big deal. I went halfway and it wasn't enough, then I just went the whole way, so I could probably tweak that a little bit to adjust the nose depth here where the hood lines up, but I'm not too critical about everything perfectly lining up. This is an old truck that's been beat up, and that fender's been whacked and welded on. The other side's fiberglass, so if it's reasonably close, I'm going to be real happy, which it pretty much already is. So anyway, so if you run into that problem where the hood will close most of the way but the front won't come down, basically this lip here will run into that, and then try adjusting that right there. Otherwise it's opening and closing really smooth. I'm really happy about that. So let me show you this other spot in the back here. So I've got this all the way down, although there's still some threads. This bracket here is running into this, so I can probably dent that down a little bit and get a little bit more drop in this. But again, this piece up here is kind of high too, so the whole bracket, it's high in the front, low in the back. Although the way this is sloped, if I could bring it down farther back here, it would compensate for that. But I think I need to lower that bracket down by just trimming that piece of sheet metal. This side again, my bracket's down all the way to the point of actually hitting that piece of metal, same thing. And that's where the hood is just about lined up over here. So definitely start out high, because if you start out low, you're going to be more apt to chip your paint if you're putting together something nice. Start with a big gap and start shrinking it as you go. I could see fenders might be a big issue. You know, if fenders are too tight the first time you close the hood, it's going to pinch in that seam. I got lucky, I guess, but I put everything pretty much back the way it was. So maybe because it was on there for years, it settled right back into where it used to be. But I would imagine dealing with aftermarket fenders and stuff, a guy could really have a bit of a hassle on his hands doing that. But just take your time and go slow, and set regs along different areas to keep it from chipping the paint if it were to be too tight. So I'll mess with that little other bracket on the other side, lower it down a little bit, and see what that see what that gets me. Something else I just noticed I'll point out is when the hood's all the way open by itself, it comes down and hits the V8 emblem on the grill. So I just took a piece of rubber mud flap, or actually it's not a mud flap, it's a old floor mat. So I just got it so it can drape it over the grill while the hood's up to keep that from rubbing against each other. I think I'm pretty happy with the way I've got it adjusted now. This side, the seams all look pretty good. Like I said, I still need to grind out the fender up there. This side, I'll lift the hood up and show you, but I lowered that bracket all the way down. It's still maybe a hair high in the back, but that could be as much the fender adjustment as anything. But I noticed that the hood's a little behind here, but if I bring the hood farther forward, this gap here is going to get even bigger, and it's plenty big enough as it is. So I guess the only way to fix that would be to adjust the fender back more, but there's not really much adjustment because well, there is, but I just don't know if it's worth messing with. I'm pretty sure this is always lined up like this, even when it was on the old hinges. In fact, this lines up better than the old hinges. They were just, from what I heard, they weren't very good even when they were new. So nothing that lined up very good. The guy that originally painted this truck for us when I was a teenager, he'd been in auto body forever, and he actually showed me a trick of how to close these hoods with original springs. As you'd lower the hood down to where it touches in the front, and then you push it back to get it to latch and shut easy. So but anyway, he said that they were pretty much like that when they were brand new. So even if you had brand new hinges and everything, they weren't very good. So this is a good improvement on that. So I'm happy with this. I'll lift it up and I'll show you what I've done to the bracket underneath, lower this other side a little bit more. So on this part that I had the washers under before, I just notched this lip out front and back, and then just bent it over with a punch, just kind of hammering it all along there, going back and forth, just nice and easy. And then I also took a punch and lowered this bracket down in there, just right where this rod sits on it. I just hammered that down a little bit to lower that bracket a little bit more. The guy could probably take and notch the rod out itself with a grinder. If you didn't want to hammer on that, that would probably be fine. So yeah, I think that'll be fine. I'm thinking Loctite on these would probably be a good idea. There's no lock nut on the other side. It didn't come with a lock nut, or lock washer rather, or lock nut. So I could see that maybe vibrating loose, considering the hood is riding on that. So I think I'll loosen it up one final time, put a little bit of blue Loctite on there, and then snug it down. And I still haven't put these brackets on yet. That can come anytime. That's pretty low priority. But yeah, I'm happy with this tilt hood kit. I think the installation went really smooth. I don't see any reason the guy couldn't do this with basic tools. The welding kind of sucked. You know, if you don't have a welder and you got a bracket like I did that was broken, or the weld was cracked on it, I could see that being a problem. But that shouldn't normally be the case. You shouldn't expect to have to weld that or patch your hole like I had to up there. But no, I'm real happy with this. I think this is a good purchase for the price. Just got the hood latch installed just to finish up this hood project, at least for the most part. Still need to Loctite some things, but I seem to have got this in the first time. It shuts good and stiff. My guess is it's already pretty well impregnated since this one come off of this truck. It's pretty rough shape, so I'm guessing the dents and divots, it sits right back probably where it was, but it closes nice and snug, really snug actually. There's no movement in that at all. And just to note, I don't have a safety latch. It seems like most guys that run these reverse tilts don't use the safety latch. I never had one on this truck, so it broke off before I got it, but always made me nervous. I always tied something like a piece of wire or something under there as my safety catch. Not really needed now. If it were to pop up going down the road, it's not going to fly up and get you like it would have with the stock hinges. So so I think that's it for now, other than kind of doing some tidying up. Oh, and I'll look at doing that the holder thing. I'll go pull the shafts, those pistons off the Mustang, and see if I can get one of them to fit on here, just for giggles, and I'll update you if I end up doing that. I'm mocking up the Mustang hatchback piston, and what I took the measurements off the Mustang. The one on the body is 12 inches from the hinge, 12 inches, and then from there 20 inches to the mount center point. And this mocked up, it looks like it works good, but I can't test closing it because the piston is so stiff that I don't have enough force to close it. I mean, it starts bending this lip and everything. So I can't even hardly push this piston down, sitting on the ground and shoving down my upper body or all my weight. It's super stiff. So, which I replaced these not long ago in that car. That hatch is really heavy, so I'm not surprised that they're that way. But I don't see these working for this just because of the weight rating or whatever on them. But one thing I can tell I would have to do is this bracket needs to come out farther. So I'm sure when this closes, that bracket would probably hit on here somewhere. So it needs to be spaced out a little bit to go over to there. And then even the hood might close, and I would maybe even need to take this bracket and space it up above that lip a little ways, you know, move it up here so it would be out and above this lip here. And then this bracket come off the Mustang too. I had to bend it to a 90, but I just unscrewed that right off the Mustang. So this in theory would work if that piston wasn't so darn stiff. So I might look it up. Maybe I bought heavy duty ones and the guy can get lighter duty ones. I assume so. If so, I'll order on and try this later and see if it'll actually close and not bind up and stuff. So to be continued.